Hey players, I'm so lucky to be here with Dr. Warren Farrell. Let me give you guys a quick overview about Warren Farrell here. Warren Farrell is a New York Times bestseller and considered one of the world's top 100 thought leaders by the Financial Times. He's also a pioneer in the men's movement and the women's movement and has appeared in over 1,000 TV shows, being interviewed by some of the biggest names out there. His most recent book, The Boy Crisis, takes a deep dive into the research as to why boys are struggling today and what we can do about it. Warren, I'm so grateful and happy to have you here on my channel.
Hi, thank you for the service you're doing, reaching out to adolescents who are usually at their most insecure period of finding out who they are in the world and trying to navigate that, especially if they don't have dads.
Yeah, definitely. And, I've been reading more into your book and stuff, and I think that, in the book, it seems like you break down, in The Boy Crisis, you break down there's four main groups that essentially kind of boys struggle with, or where the boy crisis comes into play. And I wanted to I had a few questions to kind of dive into those topics, so I'd love to get your expertise on that. One of the first things I wanted to kind of talk about is, many boys today kind of struggle with school, whether it's paying attention in class, whether it's feeling like school is rewarding for them, feeling like it's hard for them to maybe reach out for assistance if they need help. And, I wanted to just kind of get your advice on that. What do you think boys can do, or what do you think boys need to make it easier for them to succeed academically?
Well, I think the most important single tool that I think any boy or girl can have really is the tool of listening and hearing what people say, making sure the person who's speaking feels heard. Almost every human being, as the other person is speaking, is not really fully listening. They're what I call self-listening. They're listening to themselves create a response to what the other person says, but without realizing that, if you really want people to be attracted to you and find the space that you hold comfortable for them, just hear what they're saying and share with them what you heard them say. That is so soothing. So few people really feel heard, and people who do feel heard by you sort of really just like that leaves them in a place that is far more soothing, comfortable, and they become desirous of sort of being with you to a greater degree than any other single thing. Now, with girls and boys, that is especially true. If you're a guy who's interested in being with a girl, most girls sort of see that they sort of see guys become very nervous, and the more attracted you are to the girl, the more nervous you become. And so oftentimes you do that by you start talking about yourself. And again, the most important thing is that you can do is to hear what she says and say, so what I hear you saying is that accurate? And ask her, is that accurate? And if she says, no, well, sort of, but I was really trying to say that. Most guys will go ahead and start trying to figure out a defense to say, no, I really was saying that. But instead, it's really more helpful to just say so, and to correct yourself, and to correct yourself in regard to making sure she does feel that you have heard her exactly very, very well. And when a woman feels that she's being heard well, you're empowering her. She feels good around you. She feels heard around you. Very few people hear other people very well. Now, having said that, once you hear her well, then sharing a little bit about what makes you active, involved, effective in the world. Do you play basketball? What are you involved with? Do you love doing, math? Are you on the math team? Are you an actor? Do you have a passion? She wants to hear your passion, because women don't fall in love with men who are living in their parents' basement and dropping out of school and don't have motivation. Women consciously and unconsciously look for men who are performers, who can do well. But if you start out talking about your performance, the woman is going to be seeing the insecurity that's coming from, and that insecurity will have an impact on her that will make her want to withdraw from you, rather than you being secure enough to draw her out. And then after you do that, sharing a little bit about yourself, or at least leaving some space for her to ask you questions about you.
Yeah, and I think that's so powerful. Kind of finding commonalities and then showing a person that you're just genuinely interested in them as a person. I think a lot of times, like you said, we just enter a conversation just wanting to fill the gap in the empty space with just speaking, because maybe we don't know how to listen as well, and we're so used to kind of just filling awkwardness with just by speaking over the silence there.
Yes. And you don't, at the beginning, need to blame yourself if you're not genuinely interested. Genuine interest comes from knowing someone and that connection, feeling like, oh, I'm really seeing some complexity to this person. I'm seeing some nuance. And that's what builds genuine interest. So the beginning stages of inquiry and then sharing what you heard the person say, that's what creates the foundation for genuine interest to emerge.
Yeah, I think that's so incredibly true. Something that I think that a lot of young guys struggle with too, and just staying on that topic there, is there's a lot of maybe pessimism or self-doubt. They believe, why would this person care about me? I'm not interesting enough. I bring nothing to the table. I mean, I think there's two parts to that. One part is, how do you kind of get over that hump of self-doubt? And then also, how do you build a level of confidence in yourself so that you do feel like, hey, I bring something valuable to the table?
Yes. And so the only person, the person you're meeting, this woman or another guy you're meeting, cares about at the point of meeting is themselves. And so your victory, so to speak, in connecting with them comes from asking them about themselves and hearing who they are in a way that is better than other guys than hear who they are. So while other guys are sort of are showing their plumage and dancing around, and the women are sort of like laughing and interested, that they're interested. Remember, at the beginning, they don't care about you. It's only unless they've seen you on the football team and so on, or seen you as a celebrity in the school, they're not likely to be caring about you at first. But what is always guaranteed is that the person speaking, whether male, female, trans, they care about themselves. And when they see you not just ask the questions about themselves, but share with them what you heard them say, that's when they feel, oh, when I'm around this person, whether it's conscious or unconscious, I'm feeling seen, I'm feeling heard. That's the magic. And rather than correcting them, rather than saying you got it right, when they maybe do correct you or add something or modify something, working on getting it until they say, wow, yeah, you can feel that they feel understood. Never say to someone, I understand. I understand is really a substitute for shut up. I've heard enough. But tell them what you understand until they tell you, wow, yes, you can see in their eyes that they feel understood.
Yeah, and I'd be curious to hear, like, I'll give an example. Let's say you're talking to someone and they say, hey, I had a really bad day at school. I failed the test. My parents are upset with me. And they share that with you. What do you think would be a good response to let them know that you kind of acknowledge and hear what they're saying?
That is really a bummer. You must feel terrible about that. Just stop there. And then that opens the door for them to say more. The invitation for the person who's sharing grief with you to say more is much more important than you telling a story about how you had a similar circumstance. Because at the beginning, the person who's sharing the grief wants more space to go deeper. And when you share your grief, you will think about that as empathy. But that empathy is a good second step about your sharing something but the first step is never underestimate the need for someone else to feel valued by your creating the space for them to go deeper. The big mistake is moving the conversation away from them to you too quickly. And then when you do give, say, an example, yes, like I had the same type of experience, and you elaborate on that experience, make sure it goes back to them again. Don't use your stories to pull over to you. And if the woman or man that you're talking to feel it picks up on your story and asks you to elaborate more, remember again, if the original grief, the original hurt, the original pain came from them, make sure it goes back to them. All these things will register unconsciously, meaning that the person may not walk away and say, Billy or whatever did this with me, but she or he will feel like, when I'm around him, I really feel, or her, I really feel sort of seen, and that's what you want. Now, in the Boy Crisis book, a couple of important things to tap into. Most people not only don't feel seen by the people they meet, but they feel even less seen by their parents, which is ironic because almost all parents, their desire is to understand and be empathetic to their children, and they their entire life is focused on making sure that your life is as good as possible. So it's really weird for a parent to hear that. But for the most part, when you're at a dinner table and you're sharing something that maybe happened that's difficult in school, or somebody you didn't get along with, what you immediately or you suggest that maybe there's some new research on psilocybins that say that those that they're really healthy for you, and your parents hear drugs, psilocybin, oh my God, danger, and you see that they're no longer listening to you. They're figuring out how to tell you to get off of to who are you hanging out with, and why are you saying that, and where did you get that information from, and you see all this doubt in their eyes, and you see them ready to tell an alternative story, to lecture you, to put you down, and so on. So I really encourage you to read the portion of the Boy Crisis that talks about how to set up family dinner nights without them becoming family dinner nightmares. And one of the core ways of doing that is to make sure your parents and you all know. But if you show your parents this, they'll know the structure to do this. They know how to create a safe space for each person at the family dinner table to speak up about their experience without being interrupted. And when they do speak up about their experience, the job of the other people, at least one or two other people at the table, your sister, your brother, or your father or your mother, to say, so what I heard you saying, Billy, is this, and then for your father or mother to have the to not assume that they heard correctly, but to give you space to be able to say, well, actually, Mom or Dad, I meant this, not that. And for your mom and dad to be able to say, oh, okay, so you meant this, and then share what they feel that you said, until you say to them, they've got it right. And then to be able to ask you, is there anything that they missed in sharing what you said? And then to invite you to add more if you need to. And you'll only be willing to add more when they've gotten what you've said up to that point correctly. And then once that happens, once your parents do that for you, it's also important for you to do that for your parents, and for you to do that for your brother and your sister. And when this type of skill set is practiced a couple of nights a week at family dinner nights that are structured in this way, most family dinners you'll get together and you'll do whatever in a non-structured way. But your parents, when they read the section on how to set up a family dinner night without becoming a family dinner nightmare, they will see the value of that. And one of the ways to determine whether or not your family can use that in a helpful way is if you find yourself talking more in an at-ease way with a guy friend or a woman friend than you do with your parents. That's a sign that your family can benefit from knowing how to hear each other rather than knowing how to interrupt each other, lecture each other, have a better idea than the other one, and compete with each other. That then closes the family down. The goal of all families should be, but it almost never works out this way. The goal of all families is to make sure that each person feels comfortable and secure telling their truth without being interrupted, lectured, or redirected before they feel heard. When
Hmm.
your parents speak, then it's their turn and maybe they will offer advice and maybe they will redirect. Then it's your turn to hear them without interrupting and arguing with them, but just letting them know that you're hearing what they say.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's so true that, I think we don't recognize that our families also present that opportunity for us to practice and work on our social skills, work on our empathy, to work on our social listening, and building that with talking to your mom or your dad or your siblings, will also, I think make it easier for you to now approach people outside to make new friends because you're fostering that behavior in the home and you're fostering those skills. So then it becomes easier to replicate them outside. I think
Absolutely.
one of the challenges, though, is that some people, I think, struggle with having deep, loving relationships with their families.
Mhm.
Maybe there are toxic elements in the family. Maybe there's a missing father or missing mother, or there's just fractured elements in there. Maybe someone's in jail, or some other element that kind of makes it difficult for them to form that deeper connection. From your advice, what should young people in that position do where they feel like, hey, connecting with my family just not a realistic option for me? So where else can I go? Who else can I turn to kind of work on these skills?
Yes. First, connecting with the people in your family who are present is a realistic option.
Mm.
And if you can't do that, then really spend time with the communication sections of the Boy Crisis book. But having said that, there's a lot of other options too. Let's say you're a guy and your dad was involved for a year or two, but your mom and dad got divorced, or your mom had children without being married and raised you, but basically by yourself. Maybe she lived with a man, your father, for a couple of years, and then they broke up, and you've rarely seen him. So in brief, you don't have a real solid, steady male role model. Then work on making sure that you do a number of things. One is that you get involved in sports. And when I say you get involved in sports, I mean three types of what I call in the Boy Crisis book, the liberal arts of sports. The liberal arts of sports is the most important. Single one is team sports. The second most important one is pick up team sports. Go to a basketball, go to your schoolyard and pick up a basketball game from kids you don't know. Because set the rules with the kids. You're going to play half court or full court. And the pickup team sports teaches you how to be an entrepreneur, how to create your own rules, how to create your own boundaries, how to enforce them, which ones to enforce, which ones not to enforce, and how to compromise without the supervision of somebody else telling you what to do. So you have to create your own outcomes and your own parameters. That's why pickup team sports is so helpful and so important. And then sports that require you to you're on a team, but they require largely a lot of self-discipline, like gymnastics. You're on a team, you contribute to a team, but it's largely your skills. You have to practice them over and over again to develop the skills that you will perform on those bars by yourself, or tennis, or golf, or bowling, where again you're part of a team, but the primary effort is your discipline and your contribution. All three of those sports, the ones that require the ones that I just described, require self-discipline. That's so important. Self-starting. Team sports are perfect preparation for preparing yourself to be a good family member, to be a good corporate leader. Getting along with other people is even, once you know about as much as the average person, most of the rest of your success at something comes from your social skills, your emotional skills, and the ability of the people around you to feel comfortable, and then the pickup team sports, as I said. So that's what I call the liberal arts of team sports. If you're good at one, make sure you get involved with ones that you are not inherently good at. I was a gifted runner and kicker when I was younger, but as a result of the running and kicking being good, I had very short, my ligaments had gotten very tight and my muscles had gotten very tight. So I was terrible at things like yoga. I do, before the COVID, I did yoga almost every day because it was exactly what I was bad at. And so take things that you're bad at and work at them, and develop a skill set that are in areas that are outside of your comfort zone. So those are a few things. Number two, get yourself involved if you're at the appropriate age with either Cub Scouts or Boy Scouts. The most important single part of your own development is not making sure that you got the algebra test aced out, or the calculus test aced out. In the long run, calculus skills are going to be far less important than emotional development skills. So make sure you work on those in your life, and character development, because people will notice, pick up, and care about your character. So there's solid evidence now that boys who join Cub Scouts and girls who join Brownies, they are, and especially Cub Scouts, if they're likely to be involved if you're involved in Cub Scouts consistently for 2 years or longer, very good studies show that you're much more likely to develop a very positive character. And these are studies which with control groups that are very carefully done. So character development, we all want that. Cub Scouts are really good. Boy Scouts are, in the Boy Crisis book, I deconstruct Boy Scouts and tell you exactly why the very best aspects of masculinity are developed through Boy Scouts. The Boy Scout leaders that I've talked to, they are themselves astonished that Boy Scouts are created in have evolved in such a positive way over the years. If your family is into faith, and you sort of like, probably God's fiction or whatever, you may be doubtful even about the faith, but get involved in a faith-based community, especially if the faith-based leader is getting together with other boys your own age, and to make sure that it's really clearly understood that the sharing that you do with other boys is confidential, because if it's not confidential, then you'll fear sharing what you're really feeling. Mm-hmm. And you'll find that the insecurities you feel, the anxieties you have, the times that you've bragged or bullied or exaggerated and things like that every other boy has these same experiences and same feelings. And you'll walk around, your body language will begin to change. You'll walk around with a type of internal security that others will be attracted to, both other males and also females. And so those are just a few of the things I talk about in the Boy Crisis book, that if you don't have male role models, to make sure that you get, because remember, as you go from age 9 to your 20s, here's the type of thing that happens. At age 9, if you're a guy, a boy and girl who are age 9 almost never commit suicide. And when they do, they commit it about equally. But between the ages of 10 and 14, boys commit suicide twice as often as girls. Between the ages of 15 and 19, boys commit suicide 4 times more frequently than girls. Yeah. Between the ages of 20 and 25, boys commit suicide 5 times as often as girls do. In other words, as your testosterone develops, you will be, and your social environment does not give you encouragement to talk about your fears and your feelings. You will keep your fears and your feelings to yourself, and they will become like a volcano inside of you. And testosterone plus pent up feelings creates a lot of temptation to act out, to bully, to brag, but also are likely to make you depressed. And but because guys have much less permission to talk about being depressed than girls do, And when we talk about it with other guys, the other guys are likely to sort of listen for a few seconds and then toss it off and say, well, let's play
Right.
some ball together or let's do something else.
Hmm.
But the underlying feelings, you don't feel heard by them. So it's so crucial for you to be involved with other boys your age who are in a confidential group, sharing the feelings and fears that they have, so you don't feel alone and isolated in that setting.
Yeah, and that's so true. I mean, a few of the things you mentioned, like for myself, I grew up, I was in Boy Scouts, and I feel like
Hmm.
that was such a formative period for me. I
Hmm.
learned how to work with others, and when there was confrontations, there was kind of this, I think, leadership that stepped in and helped us resolve those issues together as a team.
Yeah.
And then even for myself, me and my friends have always been involved in kind of like backyard wrestling and wrestling in the parks and just having this kind of team sport element. And I feel like that was so crucial for my own growth in learning to work well with others and feeling a sense of kind of personal autonomy and kind of sharing with others and having this kind of physical play and fun along with kind of developing friendships and being open with these people and being able to share those things. So that overlap
Absolutely.
there I felt was so crucial for my development. And I totally get what you're saying. I think it's so important. One of the things you mentioned I wanted to kind of dive deeper into was you mentioned kind of exploring kind of the positive elements of masculinity there, and that sometimes in let's say all male environments, there is this kind of like lack of desire to always like sit and listen and open up. Do you feel like there are maybe along with the positive or like negative elements in environments that are primarily boys that we should try to work on or call out or address in some kind of way?
Yeah, I think a wonderful thing to do is to usually in these type of faith-based communities, and when you are in with a group who is where it's safe to say what your feelings are, your fears are. If you're feeling like sometimes maybe you're a boy and you are mostly heterosexual, but you found yourself attracted to another boy. Say, or you're with a girl and you didn't get hard right away because you were really nervous. And these are things that most guys won't touch with a 10-foot pole. But when you do touch into it and it's confidential, then you discover that, oh, three of the guys in this room had that same feeling. And that maybe they didn't even say it for a while because after you said it, they felt like still embarrassed to say some version of that. And they may not say something like that, but it gives them permission to say something different that they felt badly about. I feel really, my penis is too small and I don't really want to be exposed, or I'm too thin, or I have broad shoulders, so I always let my shoulders show, but I have really thin legs, or vice versa, or my nose feels really, awkward, or whatever. Everyone has insecurities, so you're talking about yours opens up space for other boys to do that. And remember, this is much harder for boys to do than girls, because boys, the way we got girls was to be the alpha male, and to share any. Girls don't fall in love with boys who complain. Boys who complain they see as whining males, and they fall in love with alpha males, not whining males. And so, but the result of that is we unbecome people. We're not valued for being human beings who have full ranges of feelings, and then we're blamed for having toxic masculinity. Because we repress our feelings. So we're caught between a rock and a hard place. If we express our feelings, and our feelings include things that we're worried about or feel insecure about, that looks really bad to other boys. Other boys might talk to other boys about it and make hay out of that. And so we learn to really shut up about it. Or we mention it to a girl, and the girl feels like, oh God, I don't want to be involved with him. He's really insecure.
Mm-hmm.
But in fact, you're secure enough to know that those things can be shared. And so the same type of thing is in confronting the culture. If you're hearing people say, the future is female, well, how do you feel about that? If you're hearing people say males have male privilege, how do you feel about that? Well, talk it through with people that it's safe to talk it through. You'll find that there's a lot of possibilities. But then when you get involved with a girl, and make sure that you are open enough to talk with her about that. Will you lose some girls? Absolutely. And count that as a blessing. That the girl you lose is somebody that can't hear who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Have the strength to be who you are, and you will absolutely lose some people in the process, and therefore you will not have an opportunity cost lost. That is, you'll be able to focus your life on people who can hear who you are, rather than trying to convince people who can hear you who you are that you're worthy of their attention.
I think that's so powerful. One thing I wanted to ask you is, I've come across different organizations online that are aiming to also help young men and boys. Are there any kind of organizations or practices that that young boys who, let's say, are feeling left out or feeling abandoned within society? Like you had mentioned, kind of even hearing a phrase like "the future is female" may interpret that as like, well, does that mean males are not important? Does that mean I'm not important? Do you think that there are any good organizations out there that are helping boys kind of work through those feelings, or kind of are giving good advice, or mentorship in any kind of way?
Yes, there's a group called Boys to Men that is nationwide and is really good at this type of thing. Boys to Men encourages you to have mentors, and that's very important. There's two things that are important on the mentorship area. One is, especially if you don't have a dad at home, what I found when I did the research for the boy crisis is that boys who go from female-only homes to elementary schools where there's almost all female-only teachers, they have no positive male role models in their life. And so their testosterone tends to get channeled destructively rather than constructively. So, for example, almost all your mass shooters are dad-deprived boys. And especially your mass school shooters that kill a lot of people, that are so angry that they plan their school shootings so effectively as to kill 10 or more people. Every boy in that category in the 21st century has been a dad-deprived boy. Your ISIS recruits are dad-deprived boys. And the smaller percentage of girls that are ISIS recruits are dad-deprived girls. And so if you don't have a dad at home, you're finding a mentor is very important. Boys to Men is a very good organization. There are many groups like Young Men's Ultimate Weekend that give you experiences here in California, but there are groups all throughout the country. The Mankind Project, MKP. Just Google that, or in the Boy Crisis book, I have a whole series of organizations and resources that boys can go to for really good role models. But the important thing is that most of these organizations still only know of the value of finding yourself a mentor. But you need to know that there's even more value in finding yourself someone that you can mentor. Because when you're helping a boy out, and you start taking responsibility, you want to be able to direct him well. And to direct him well, he has to honor you and respect you. But in order to honor and respect you, if you're taking drugs and therefore not focused on completing work at school, or you tell him, I'm going to be on the basketball team, but then you don't practice a lot, and so you fail to be on the basketball team, you're not going to be as good a role model for him as if you practice and practice and practice. You get on the basketball team, you invite him to a game, and then he sees you play in that game and do well in that game. Or acting or musician or whatever your skill set is. Then he's going to understand implicitly that he will pay more attention to you, and you will feel good because you're helping him more, and he can look up to you and see a real role model that doesn't say one thing and do another.
Right.
And so boys are helped even more. So find somebody to mentor you, but also find somebody to mentor. Boys make more progress by having someone they're helping than they do even by having somebody that helps them, even though both are important.
Yeah, and that's something I'm personally even aiming to do. Even with my YouTube channel here,
Hmm.
a lot of it is me sharing my experiences, talking about things I've gone through, sharing advice, and a lot of the young people that have watched me for years. So they've gone through their formative development years with me, and now they're going off into college and things like that, and they're older. And what I'm really trying to foster is kind of like, if I've helped you, then like maybe there's something you can do to help someone else in your life, a younger person in your life that is going through things that you went through. So just trying to
Yeah,
pass that along. I think I think you nailed it on the head there. There's so much value in being a positive role model who really lives your values for a person that is looking up to you, because I think a lot of
absolutely.
times, a lot of us, let's say you're a parent, or let's say you're a father, like you mentioned, it's so important to really live the values that you want your children to really, hold up and maintain. But if you're not doing that yourself, then you're not really setting that positive direction.
Absolutely. And I very much agree with what you're saying. So here's an example. So say you're feeling lonely and you don't have a good male role model. So you watch Josh Speaks, you join the Boy Scouts, or you join the Cub Scouts. You notice a few other boys that you really like and feel comfortable with. And so invite them over and watch an episode of Josh Speaks. That will trigger some conversation afterwards. If the boys you feel comfortable talking with afterwards, invite them into a group that meets once a week or once every couple of weeks, ideally once a week. I've started 300 men's groups, so I do know the ones that do the best are meet once a week. Make sure that everything you say in that group is confidential, and that every boy knows that anything that is used against you out of that group, or even spoken of positively that was in the group, that is the end of that boy's involvement in the group. That's the one no. Get involved in the group in such a way that everybody in that group has about an equal amount of time to speak. The two most important considerations for getting a successful group of peers together is that everything is confidential, and that nobody dominates the group. And we have opportunities today that we never had when I was growing up, which is to be able to see something like Josh Speaks to stimulate a conversation. And when I grew up, there was no such thing as Zoom, the internet, or whatever, and so nobody could see that anybody out there was doing anything constructive toward helping boys to open up. Remember, we hear liberals say about this toxic masculinity. Liberals are right. There's toxic masculinity, but we often hear liberals say that's a result of male privilege. They're wrong. Toxic masculinity did not come from male privilege. It came from male sacrifice. Having to sacrifice yourself at war in every generation meant that in order to be disposable at war, which is what it required, a male to be a male was required to prepare himself to be disposable. And each generation's war. And to be disposable, you had to keep your feelings to yourself. If you were disposable, who cared about the way feelings that you had? You were being prepared to be part of a war machine. The war machine works best when there are no squeaky wheels. And if you're let's say Jewish, and the sergeant in boot camp says something anti-Semitic, and you speak up and say, "Gee, that sounded anti-Semitic to me." The job of that boot camp sergeant was to make sure that he insulted you and mocked you enough that you got the message that your feelings did not matter. That is, you unbecame a human being because they needed you there as a human doing. Now that created toxicities in you, but that toxicity was not from male privilege. That toxicity was from the expectation of males to be disposable and sacrifice themselves. So your heritage as a male is to prepare yourself to be disposable. But for the first time in human history, we have much more social permission for males not just to train themselves to be human doings who are disposable, but to be human beings who have a full breadth of feelings. So don't object to claims of males having toxicity, but do object to them coming from male privilege, but also recognize that females also have female toxicity, and males and females have a great deal of positive things to contribute to each other that do evolve from the history of their gender. And there should be plenty of permission for somebody to be transgender, but just not pressure for them to be transgender when they're younger, before they've developed their mind fully. And remember that we boys, we males, don't have a fully developed brain until we're in our mid-20s. So don't make crucial decisions about your life before you're in your mid-20s.
And yeah, interesting point there. Really just kind of, we'll wrap it up here, but I just wanted to ask more about the toxic masculinity. And I think with any kind of toxic element of something, whether it's toxic masculinity, toxic positivity, I think it's like, as you said, it's this dismissal of acknowledging kind of the value of the individual, right? So it's, like the toxic framework is think this way, act this way, do this thing, and anything that you feel that differs from it, we're either not going to acknowledge it, we're going to downplay it, or we're going to mock it in some kind of way. And I think that, like you said, it exists for males and exists for females. It exists, I think, for everyone all around. And to some degree, I think some people really gravitate towards upholding those structures of like, no, this is the way it's supposed to be. And people form a sense of identity around it too. I think a lot of young men do form a sense of identity because maybe the role models or the heroes, what they see on TV or even who they see in their schools or in their home, still carry kind of that old world ideas of like, you're a man, don't cry, don't be weak, don't do this, So, how can a person who I think is struggling with understanding what's right, what's wrong, how can they kind of approach those conversations in a way where they can get more clarity on it?
Yeah, one is to read about these issues, whether it's the Boy Crisis book and to talk about these issues. Secondly, is to make sure that you're petition your school and ask for your parents' help to petition your school to make sure that there are equal. We're in an era where we talk about diversity, inclusion, and equity. Well, take a look at your school's elementary school, junior high school. Are there equal numbers of male teachers? Are the male teachers all males like me, who I'm sort of more of a nurturer, connector type of male? Or are they also males who are more traditional, maybe a working class male who's been a construction worker for a number of years, got his bachelor's degree in teaching? Are they traditional males with traditional values as well as liberal males with liberal values? And are they, are they males of different colors, but are they also just plain males of different values? And are their values being heard in the school, or do they feel they have to keep them to themselves? So having male role models that you can look up to, no matter what your own propensities are really important. Making sure that not every school teacher is an atheist and not every school teacher is a Christian, so that there's different people you can look up to with different perspectives. And most importantly, begin to work with your school and making sure that it's safe to hear everything. If your teacher has an ideology, and that ideology prevents other people from speaking up safely without being put down or without being ignored, and then being ignored is even worse than being put down, that is really so important. If it's not happening, talk with other people who you sense agree with you. Get together a group with their parents and confront your school. If we need more male teachers in my elementary school, your parents will probably hear that and say, oh yeah, that's a good point. Maybe we can make that happen, so that the next time that they hire, it is not just a person of color or a person, but it's also a person of your gender that you can feel more understood by, especially if you're without a same-sex role model.
So really just creating a more, I guess, diverse environment of thought, of experience, of values will allow you to kind of assess and learn and kind of decide for yourself like what feels right, but that's in having that wider knowledge of it, essentially.
Yes, and make sure that that you model in your school and among your peers, listening as well as talking. As you develop thinking skills, you'll sort of begin to develop, say, you're more politically left or right, or you're more religious in this way, or atheist, or whatever, and just listen to all of those that have different perspectives rather than feeling you need to argue with them, correct them, and make them into miniature versions of you.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think that's so true, and that also really aligns with everything I'm trying to promote on my channel as well. And thank you for kind of for myself reiterating it so that I know, okay, that's, I'm in the right direction there. And hopefully to anyone watching that, rewatch this. I'm going to add timestamps so you guys can jump through each piece and really, really hone in and listen to the advice of Dr. Farrell here. Dr. Farrell, thank you so much for jumping on and sharing your advice, talking about the boy crisis, and kind of just walking us through kind of the steps on how to be more open, how to be more mindful in your experiences, and how to really kind of develop a life for yourself that I think will help you kind of figure out how to navigate navigate the world a lot clearer.
It's a real pleasure. And if I may say one thing here, I realized one of the things that it's very important in the boy crisis to read is the chapter that talks about the differences between dad-style parenting and mom-style parenting, because that will teach you what you need to, why you are so needed as a father. Fathers do so many things that are different than mothers, like roughhousing and teasing, exchanging weight-covered put-downs, letting their children take more risks, and so on. And most fathers don't know how to explain that to mothers. Most boys don't know how to explain that to the girls that they're dating. And so it's so important for you to be fully involved, to know your skill sets and your biological propensities and the value of them. Almost no boy who becomes a father is able to say, I want a rough house with the kids, because it teaches them how to be more empathetic. Though that sounds so counterintuitive. Understand why that is in fact the case, and so you can share with your future wife the value of that, and the woman you're dating can see you're a guy who really thinks about these things, who wants to be the best parent possible. That's the type of guy I want to have in my life for the long run.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's incredibly true. I mean,
If I may say last thing, just by the way, a lot of people do not like to read. So to take a listen to the audible version of The Boy Crisis, don't feel you have to do the reading of the book itself. That'll give you both the words, but also I hope my voice will be able to communicate it, and communicate it to you maybe with a little bit more tonality.
Awesome. Thank you again, Dr. Farrell, for jumping on the channel. I really appreciate this conversation. Hopefully we can talk again in the future.
I look forward to that. I really thank you for the work you're doing, creating a next generation that's even more productive, and making a contribution to those who haven't even been born yet.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.